All right, we have photo restore .jpg kind of moving on to the next part of the lab assignment. We are going to experiment with the other tools under here. Each one of these tools, and including the clone stamp tool, by the way, so the spot healing brush, the patch tool, all of these tools, and the clone stamp tool, they're all varying degrees of the same thing. They're all kind of clone stamping in different ways. Let's start with the spot healing brush tool. The spot healing brush tool is very, very good at removing spots. And what you might be tempted to do when working on any file with a clone stamping tool is to work directly on pixels. Now if I go, where did my layers panel go? So window layers, I think I closed it or something. If I start using this tool immediately, I can click and drag and it will sort of remove spots for me. You might even be able to finagle it into getting rid of some of these lines by clicking and dragging. And because I've zoomed in here, it's doing weird things with my cursor. It usually does best with spots. And incidentally, all of these tools behave as brushes, by the way. They're all affected by the brush engine in the same way that the brush tool is. They all have that hardness setting or softness, I guess. Actually, what is it called? Is it hardness or softness? Hardness. So the lower this setting is, and I usually recommend to not be at 100% hardness. Now with all of these tools, like I just said, it's very tempting to work directly on pixels. Notice that I'm working on my background layer. With the spot healing brush tool, you're probably okay. However, the way that you should teach yourself to work, and for some reason by default this is turned off. With all of the clone stamping tools, there is a way to sample all layers or to sample current and below. There's usually an option like that. Because it's off by default, if I create a new blank layer and I try to apply this effect, it will do nothing because it has no pixels to sample from on layer 1. There's no pixels there. However, if I check sample all layers, I can work on a new blank layer. And it works exactly the same as though I were working on the layer itself. This is how you work with any of the clone stamp tools non-destructively. Very important to work non-destructively. Don't edit pixels directly. Work on a new layer. If you really have to, if you can't figure out any other way, you can always select a pixel layer and press Command J to duplicate that layer. You can work on a new layer that's a copy of it. This is less ideal, but sometimes if you can't think of any other way to do it, it's still better than working on the background layer itself. Notice up here at the top that there are different methods by which it will fill in the spots. It can use content aware. I usually find that content aware works pretty well in small areas like the spot brush tool. And some of these others, quite frankly, content aware works pretty well. You might be tempted to take the spot healing brush tool and to start going through and selecting all of these and trying to fix all of them. There's a faster way to do this. What you can do, and I'm just going to undo a few of those by pressing, what am I pressing? Command, Alt, and Z. The patch tool is the next one I want to talk about. This one's pretty amazing because it can take huge chunks of areas and fix them. So what I'll do is, it works like a selection tool, so I'll click and drag and make a rather large selection, like so. Once I have done that, I may have made too big of a selection actually, but let's try it. No, don't. Oh, you know what? Shoot. I forgot to select, well, I can change the patch from normal to content aware. I recommend that you do that. So select content aware with your patch tool. I forgot to do that, sorry. And then check sample all layers if it's not checked. It might be checked by default. And that was the error I was just getting. And you know what? I think I made too big of a selection, so I'm going to undo that right quick. I grabbed a little bit too much. And I'll press Command D to deselect with that tool, just like you with any selection. So I'll make a selection. This time I'm just going to grab one kind of swath like that. And then I'm going to click the selection and drag it to an area that I want it to kind of duplicate and then blend together. So voila, look at how good that did it. And I can apply it more than once. Click and dragging it over, and voila, I've applied it like so. Clicking and dragging like so. The other tool I want you guys to be aware of. I think it's important for you guys to pay attention. I'm going to give you time to work on this right now, as soon as I'm done talking. So I think the way that this will work is I'm going to go over these, let's see, 4 or 5 tools real quick, and then I'm going to walk around and help you guys individually. The healing brush tool works a little bit like the clone stamp tool. A little bit like the clone stamp tool, in that I need to sample an area in order to use it. So with the clone stamp tool and with the, which tool is this? I forget what they're called sometimes. Healing brush tool, I have to sample an area before I click. If I use the spot healing brush tool, what the spot healing brush tool is, it looks at the surrounding pixels and fills it in. But what that tool will not do very well is when I get to areas where I have like the line of this baby's face. So let me just use the spot healing brush tool right quick. And if I click and drag over that, notice that it didn't really maintain the line of this person's head. You know what? Right quick, I'm going to add an adjustment layer just to make it a lot easier for you to see on the projector. I'm going to add some contrast and brightness to this layer. And if I look closely here, and I'll press J to grab my tool, we can see here how it kind of messed up that. If I try that with the spot healing brush tool, it may not work actually, but at least I can sample an area where it will do a better job of duplicating. Aha, I forgot to change this from current layer to all layers or current and below. Either one of these will work fine. I'll go ahead and just select current and below. And if I click over here, in theory, I should be able to get it to do a better job. I might have to have it redo it. Let's see. Yeah, so a little bit better job than what I had there before. It's still kind of a little bit wonky, but let's see. Is there content aware? There's usually a content aware option on most of these tools, but I don't see one for this one. Pattern. There might be one under pattern. No. There's some weird stuff you can do with these tools, but it's kind of beyond the scope. So there's those tools. With the healing brush tool, remember I have to alt-click and sample an area. And of course it's going to do a pretty magnificent job. It will still try to blend it. It will try to blend what you're creating in the end. The last tool I want to cover right quick is the clone stamp tool. Easily the hardest to use, but probably the most powerful because it doesn't blend it for you. It literally copies the pixels that it sees onto under the brush. So what I have to do is I have to alt-click and sample an area. And of course I forgot to change my current layer to sample all layers. I'll do current and below because I don't know how this levels layer is going to affect it. But if I alt-click, it is literally going to stamp those pixels. Now one thing that takes a lot of practice is seeing very, very subtle changes in tone. And I'm over exaggerating this just so you can see it on the screen. And I've also applied a very hard brush, which makes it very, very obvious. You usually want to clone stamp with a very soft brush, or rather a brush with hardness of 0. And I just right-clicked here and I can access those brush options. It's very hard to kind of blend these together. Oh man, see, I really had a hard time there. And usually means that you have to sample multiple times. If you get advanced with this, you can adjust the opacity and apply it in multiple passes and kind of gradually create that kind of texture or whatever it is you're kind of creating. When I did this one, the mouth is by far the hardest thing to recreate. None of the healing tools will work on it, I don't think. You can try them. But, I mean, the patch tool isn't really going to get it. Let's try that. Why not? I don't know what it'll do. Okay, that's creepy. I didn't really get the mouth to look quite right, but because it was only a small photo, I kind of just went with it. But I had to clone stamp it. I had to go through that clone stamping manually process. One of the nice things about the clone stamp tool is that you have a lot of control with it if you go to Window Clone, the Clone Source panel. You can do a lot of different things with the clone stamp. So you can rotate what you stamp before you stamp it, which is pretty nice because if I want to recreate this line of this person's head, because I kind of messed it up, right? I can, let's see, grab my clone stamp tool, click here, and it's going to show me a preview of what it's going to look like. But I need to rotate it slightly, right, in order for it to line up properly. So I can change the rotation slightly. So I'll increase the rotation just a little bit. And what it's going to do is it's going to show me how much it's rotating. I don't really find that very useful. Oops, I might have gone the wrong way with it. Let's see. And I'm just going to keep trying values until I get something quite right. Oh, I keep going the wrong way. Let's see, let's try about 25% or so. There we go, that's looking pretty good. And I was able to kind of blend that together with a nice soft brush and get that to curve a little bit better than I had before. So those are the 4 different tools. I think I said 5, they're really just 4. 4 different tools. There was also, just right quick, the Redeye tool. It does what you think it does. If somebody has Redeye, you just draw a selection over it. It kind of works sometimes it doesn't. For the most part, that tool is not very useful because cameras nowadays, they have red eye reduction in them, and it's pretty rare that you get photos that need red eye reduction. But it is there where you just kind of, obviously it's not going to do anything on this photo because it's black and white, but you basically just make a selection over the eye and it automatically reduces that red tone for you. Kind of rare to ever need that one. So go ahead and start working on this one. I'm not expecting you to get the mouth perfect, but let's try to keep it non-Children of the Corny.